1930, there were 6 million farms in America. Today, that number has plummeted to 1.8 million. And now 85% of the beef in America is controlled by just 4 companies. That means fewer farmers have to produce more food, thus incentivizing them to produce a high quantity of food instead of high quality food. Plus, if something goes wrong, the 98% of us that don't grow food are at risk of starving. Yikes, that's dark. Let's go darker. A few very wealthy companies have control over all the food. And if North Korea has taught us anything, a centralized food supply can accidentally or intentionally kill a lot of people. The bottom line is this: you can't wait until hits the fan to figure out what your family's going to eat, but all hope is not lost. Here's the plan. It's called From the Farm, an industry-disrupting platform that directly connects customers and local farmers with a website that's as easy to use as Airbnb. From the Farm gives you fresher, higher quality foods, strengthens communities, and helps small farmers not only survive, but thrive. We can't do this alone. We need the strength of the American people behind us. Help us build a new food system that combines the wisdom of the past with the technology of the future. Investing in From the Farm isn't just a financial decision. It's an investment into our future, our small family farms, and our food sovereignty. Invest today.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another From the Farm podcast. Probably the most inconsistent podcast on the internet right now. Jim and I were just talking about how crazy life is, and I get to them when I have time between travel. So I figure, you know what, Jim, most people are probably just finding us randomly anyway. And when they find the episode, they won't know, they won't care. And so,
well, last year I could have fought you for that title, but Shad come in and he's forced me to do it at once a week. So now we're on once a week. But
good,
yeah,
more consistent.
I was the same way for quite a while. So
yeah, awesome. Well, I've got Jim back with me. We've had Jim on once before. It's been a long time, but we've caught up with each other at RCAF, and just as you guys have seen, I'm a huge fan of what you guys do at Lonesome Lands. You and Shad over there. Get a lot of my knowledge from you when I'm on the road traveling. So appreciate the work you guys are doing. Jim is with Lonesome Lands Podcast. If you go to lonesomelands.com, he's got some awesome content that him and Shad Sullivan talk about. Are you guys weekly? Is your show weekly?
Or once a week.
Once a week. So really good stuff. We met at RCAF. RCAF's a big group that I support, that Jim supports, Shad supports. They represent and fight for the things that matter to the independent cattle producers. Independent meaning they're not part of the big four. They might sell in the auction that goes to the big four, but they don't want to be tied to any of that stuff. They don't make money on exports. We're going to get into a lot of that in this show, but RCAF, I came to RCAF as an outsider. I'm not a cattleman. I don't have cattle. I just got into this fight to help support our farmers and ranchers for food sovereignty and food security. So I started looking around, and having done the research I was doing about what freedom in America looks like and how it's attached to our beef supply chain and our ranchers and their success. As I was finding these different organizations, it was just easily clear that RCAF supported the independent cattle producers, and the other big one that we're going to talk about out there does not. They claim the title to be supporter of the ranchers of America, but that's simply not true. And I didn't even know some of the statistics till I was doing some more research for the show about how many members they actually have that are independent ranchers. I mean, it's crazy. So I came to RCAF because I from the outside looking in, trying to find a group that I could back to help support them, because there's so much to do in helping fix our food system that I don't have the knowledge or the expertise to get involved with the legal side. And it was great to find that somebody like RCAF, they're fighting mandatory country of origin labeling. They're fighting RFIDs. They're fighting these things that I knew needed to be done. I just wasn't the person to do them. And it was comforting and encouraging to know that group was out there doing that. So anyway, just to remind you guys right before we jump into this, this is a live show. So wherever you're watching, we can see your comments. So if you have questions or comments, go ahead and post them. If you're on Instagram, I'm looking over on this screen to check comments on Instagram. And I do have some notes down here below. So let's jump into it. Jim, tell us, where are you from?
I am from Griswold, Iowa, originally. My address is now McClelland, Iowa, which is just another little town up the road. And my family farmed and has a cow-calf herd outside of Griswold. And so I've been pretty much around here most of my life.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice. And what do you produce now? I know the mounts behind you. That's a big part of what you do.
Yep. Yeah. So when I got out of college, I started my own business called the Drover House. And it is mainly, it's Longhorn. I build stuff out of Longhorns, the Longhorn actual horns. And so, and so that has, I think that's 20 years now I've been doing that. I did it full time for, I think 10 or so. And then I've always worked on the farm, but it kind of became a little more official like 10 years ago, where it was like a part-time deal that I took on, as well as running the business. And then I think I've done Lonesome Lands now for like 7 years, which is just, it started as a side thing just when I had time, and has kind of built up into this, to where I'm really kind of pushing it now, and going to continue pushing it as like a media type company.
Yeah. Great.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And that's good. I mean, we've certainly learned that there's a lot of power and influence, and, the people getting behind the messages that are needed to be heard to help fix our food system. There's such a rallying behind that. It's I'm sure you're as encouraged as I am. The amount of consumers that are getting involved in the food fight that hasn't happened in, 50 years. It's like, it blows people's mind.
Right.
When I was talking to the RCAF guys, they're like, I was telling them, I was like, listen, the things that people respond the most to, the public responds the most to, is policy. And they're like, what? And I said, yeah, the things that you guys are doing is what they're most interested in, because they're aware that it's their food that's being taken or abused. And so getting it out through social media, through influencers, and then having other people share it can be very, very helpful.
Yeah.
So,
so
you're going to lean into it, help keep that message going. You've got some great content, really helpful. So we're going to talk tonight about NCBA and the Checkoff. And so NCBA was the other organization I was referring to. We're going to make some of the same enemies and maybe some new ones, depending on what kind of traction this show gets, but it needs to be said, so we say it. But so here's how I'm going to open up. I'm going to share it with you guys that don't know how this works, sort of a parable. So imagine a rural community filled with independent ranchers, which used to be all across this nation. These men and women wake up at dawn, care for their herds, tend to the land, and raise cattle the right way. Now imagine the government imposes a rule. Every time a rancher sells a cow, they must pay $1 to a fund that promotes beef. Now, at first, it sounds fair. Ranchers assume that the dollar will help educate consumers, promote real beef, and bring attention to their way of life. But then they discover something shocking. The dollar is being handed to a massive corporate lobbying group. The NCBA, National Cattlemen's Beef Association, an organization that takes millions in mandatory fees but only represents less than 3% of cattle producers. Even worse, NCBA works hand in hand with the big four meat packers: JBS, Cargill, National Beef, or Morfrig now, and Tyson. They work together, and we're going to break down sort of how that group, how that happened. How did that come together? We'll talk about that. So they represent the big four packers, and in fact, they're members of the NCBA. So they work hand in hand. The very corporations driving down that have now created the massive inflation in prices, right? At first, they drove down the prices. Then we lost our inventory. And now we're on the backside of losing our inventory from driving down prices. Ranchers are out of the game. So now we have very slim inventory left, and prices are going through the roof. So they're killing local processing, slaughterhouses, and pushing small producers out of business. When ranchers ask to label their beef born, raised, and harvested in the U.S., The NCBA is one of the groups that blocks it. If they're representing producers, why would they block you, the consumer, from knowing where it's from, and the producer from allowing you to know where it's from? So now every time ranchers sell a cow, they're funding the machine that's trying to replace them. So that's kind of just a synopsis or a parable of what it looks like for ranchers. Every beef cow sold has to pay $1. You and Shad were talking about them showing up at a junior livestock show as well, making sure they got every dollar.
Yeah, it was Kansas. They sent out Steve Stratford, who he works at a sale barn, but he posted on Facebook, they sent out a card that said, because livestock shows, sometimes it's a premium only sale, which means the animal doesn't sell. They just kind of auction off support for the 4-H'er. But it said any time, make sure that if your animal actually sells, that you, because it can sell to a private individual at a lot of these sales, and then they can just take it to the butcher. And there was something a few years ago, guys that were just taking it straight to the locker. I think it was Ohio sent out something that said, make sure you send us your $1 if you take your cattle and straight to the locker. And so, it's crazy. That synopsis you gave was good, but it's so there. And the other thing is there's so many little details that are just mind blowing. One of them is like you talking about $1 per head. It's also $1, a certain number of pounds that get imported. Mm-hmm. The importer pays a checkoff. So I think it's like 600 or 700 pounds, like a carcass weight, a typical carcass weight, which would be like 600 or 700 pounds imported to the U.S. The importer pays the checkoff $1, meaning the NCBA, the more pounds that get imported into the U.S., the more NCBA gets through the checkoff, or the checkoff gets, and indirectly NCBA. And so really, the cattle herd shrinking in the U.S. doesn't really impact the checkoff that much, as long as we're importing more and more and more. And so that goes to show, like, we're having to pay for this program that really has no incentive to keep to keep producers on the land or to keep a large herd in the U.S.
Yeah, right. So, but the checkoff. So let's go back to the checkoff and what it was intended for. They launched it in 1985 to promote beef through research, education, and marketing. That's what its original intention was for this checkoff. So funded by that $1 per head sold, regardless of the size, it was like, we're all going to benefit because we're going to promote these campaigns so everybody around America knows that beef is what's for dinner. And in fact, you might remember this commercial.
Tonight in Bay Point, Maine, it's beef bourguignon. In Malibu, it's sirloin kebabs. You'll find beef fajitas at the Four Fork Ranch. And Kung Pao beef in Chinatown. In New Orleans, it's Creole pepper steak. And beef braciola in the north end of Boston. There's a great corned beef sandwich at 7th and 55th. And in Chicago, a porterhouse steak, the perfect medium rare. At the end of each day, all over the country, nothing satisfies so many people in so many ways. Beef, it's what's for dinner.
I don't know.
Wouldn't that be great to see today?
Man, I don't know anybody that hasn't heard that commercial.
Right.
I mean, if you're in America in that area and you were growing up that time, you know that commercial. That's what the checkoff was meant for. And actually, I would argue that would be worth it, because like one of the things I've been saying, I've been back to DC a couple of times. My thought is, if there was one thing that they could do right away that would help rapidly, would be to release a marketing campaign to drive to educate consumers on how to buy from their local farmers and ranchers nationwide, promoted at the level of Victory Gardens, help them remember or educate them. Now, if they're 1 or 2 generations away from farming, they have no clue how to really most of them have no clue how to get started. So if there was a campaign that just did what the checkoff was supposed to do, that would start putting immediate retail dollars into the pockets of the producers across the nation and bring immediate relief. And many times I've heard Bill say many times, we don't want handouts. We want a fair shake and let us do our job. That's what every producer I've heard says. We don't want a handout. Just quit making it so damn hard for us to participate.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say that campaign, by the way, was launched in 1992. So
yeah. And Leo Burnett Advertising Company, which I believe they came up with Michelin Man. I think Tony the Tiger, all of these big time, that's what they did back then is they took the checkoff money and went to the biggest and best advertising firm in the country and said, make us a great ad. And they did it. And, NCBA comes in a few years later. NCBA I don't think merged to where they are. And at that time they were National Cattlemen's Association. And then I think it was 96 or sometime around then that they became National Cattlemen's Beef Association. And that's when the beef packer, the corporate packers came in and kind of started controlling things. And they, and so since then they still kind of just ride the coattails of that advertising campaign. I've thought about I need to look up how many times Coca-Cola has changed their tagline since 1992, and compare it to once.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and so then, that's kind of it for the checkoff. That's what it was supposed to be. It got that one campaign out. That was in 92. And then in 96, that's when National Cattlemen's Association merged with, what's National Packers? Or
it was the meat. I can't remember. I should have looked it up.
Meat Packing Association or something like that.
Something.
Yeah. So now you've got, and my understanding is that the National Cattlemen's was struggling. And so they needed to do something. And so their choice, they ended up merging.
Yeah. And of course it was a big fight, like anything that happens in the cattle business. There's a big fight.
You mean like the Angus Association?
Right. Well, it was different than that back then, but there was this group that really wanted to do it. And then there was a group that didn't, because their argument was, we are going to lose our independence. We aren't going to represent cattle people anymore. We're going to represent the beef industry. And, that was pretty wise thoughts back then, but unfortunately they lost.
And now that is what happened.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and I see it just simply like, the age-old saying, no man can serve two masters.
Right.
So now you're trying to serve cattlemen and packers, and packers is where all the money's made. And so because they've got more of that pool now, they're basically telling their little brother, hey, I'm carrying this all on my shoulders. All the money's coming through me. We're going to do it this way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They control. And that's the thing too. In 92, I don't know how many packers there were, but the concentration, it wasn't nearly as concentrated as it is now. And that was almost kind of this beginning of the concentration with IBP which was Iowa Beef Processors. And they kind of built and became the world's biggest beef packer through the 90s. And then they sold to Tyson, and that merger was allowed. And then, JBS comes in and buys a bunch, and here we are. But, it wasn't the concentrated industry that it is today.
Yeah. What kind of things? So when you give an organization like NCBA that much power and direct access to those kinds of funds, what has that led to? Like, what's the big, what do consumers need to know from your perspective from what's happening now?
Yeah, well, it's like you said, they'll lobby against. Right now the Prime Act is something I really want to focus on over the next year, which is, it definitely speaks to your crowd, which is reducing regulations on local lockers. Your local locker has more regulations on it than the Brazilian beef packing plants. Brazilian beef packing plants get looked at, in all foreign beef packing plants get looked at 1 to 2 times, or they get inspected every 2 to 3 years by the USDA. Your local locker has to have a USDA inspector on site every time they kill an animal, if they want it to be a USDA inspected, and every time they kill it, and through the whole process of processing the animal. And those USDA inspections happen. They get told that they're happening, so they get advance notice and all that kind of stuff. Thomas Massey has the Prime Act he's introduced multiple times now, but that would reduce those regulations on your local locker. NCBA, who controls the checkoff, they lobby against that Prime Act every time it gets introduced. And it just goes back to, mandatory country of origin labeling. They against that. They have tried to, according to Thomas Massey, they are lobbying for a mandated EID tag on all cattle, which would be against their policy. But he had tweeted that NCBA and Farm Bureau are both for the mandated electronic ID tags on cattle. So they want to control things that way.
If they were for producers, they wouldn't be lobbying for that, because most of the producers I know, I don't know any, I've not met any yet, and you can reach out to me and let me know if you're for it, but I haven't met any yet. And I've met a lot of them that want RFIDs.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a lot that use them, but even the ones that use them, would say they should not be government mandated. Right.
Yeah.
And so, but really, if an issue comes up that would help the corporations, and as the more I'm getting into this, the more I realize it's corporate feed yards also. These EID things are a big push on these corporate feed yards, which when we say corporate, there's feed yards that feed 10,000 all the way up to like Five Rivers is the biggest in the U.S. and they close to 1 million head they have on feed at all times. And so, and they used to be owned by JBS. And they are now pretty much controlled by JBS.
Is that 1 million all in one spot?
No, it's mainly Eastern Colorado, Kansas, Oklahoma, North Texas. I mean, it's a multiple different ones. Gotcha. The biggest one in one spot is being built now in Nebraska, which would be 150,000 head. I've got an email that said that got expanded to another 50,000, so it'd be 200,000 head in one spot.
Yeah. It's the thing is, like, I can see the value of those tags in a feedlot scenario like that, tracking their medical records. So it does have utility. The issue that we all have is, why does anybody have a right to know where my cows are and how many I have?
Right.
Like, I don't have to give you that right. And so that's where the divergence is. Now, like even with radio collars for rotational grazing, I think they're phenomenal. But then the concern is, who else knows where my cows are?
Right. Yeah.
Who else can access that? Right. Yeah. So if that data was private to the producer only, and if they wanted to sell it, they could. It's your cattle. That's a source of revenue, and they can keep it private.
Yeah, which does happen, and that's another concern. There are what they call program cattle, which are, non-hormone treated, no implants, those kind of things. And to get into those programs, you have to have certain certifications and EID tags. They use them in EID tags, and what they get is a premium. When those cattle sell to the packer, they get a premium. Well, if every animal has all the information of every medication they've been ever given and what they've been fed their whole life on an ear tag, and that can just be read as they walk into the beef packer, those premiums just go away. And it adds a ton of value for the beef packer, and it takes away value for the guys that are doing that kind of stuff.
And RFID, just if you're listening and don't know, it's basically electronic identification tags.
Yeah, right. So. Radio frequency ID, and now they've changed. They used to call it RFID all the time. Now they just call it EID, because some of them aren't radio frequency. They're another electronic type of reading system. So
let me pull this up real quick, because this is also part of what we're talking about, MCOOL. So this was put out by RCAF. It's not just a label, it's a legacy. Mandatory country of origin labeling, otherwise known as MCOOL, protects American ranchers, strengthens rural communities, and ensures you know where your food comes from. Imported beef can legally be labeled product of USA, making it harder to support American producers. MCOOL restores transparency, fairness, and trust in our food system. Call your senators and representatives. So label our beef is a big campaign that RCAF is putting out there right now. Part of the it's part of the what's the farm bill.
Mm-hmm.
They're really pushing to get
MCOOL in the farm bill, something like that.
Yeah. MCOOL in the farm bill. The reason I wanted to bring that in here is because, again, when we talk about organizations truly representing cattlemen, RCAF is publicly pushing for what the independent producers want. They want people to know where the beef comes from. Coincidentally, it's also what the consumers want. They want to know where their beef came from. I can't tell you how many people I talked to that had no clue. Consumers that had no clue that when they bought beef in the store, meat in the store that said, USDA processed, American processed, or whatever it says, just because it's been rewrapped, they thought they were buying American product. They have no idea that they might be buying ground beef with, from trim from cattle from South Africa.
Yeah.
Or most likely Brazil. Brazil's imports have gone way up.
Yeah. I saw that deal that came out today, but Australia is a big one. We get a lot of lean meat from lean trim is what they call it. But yeah.
So what do you think? What do you think needs to happen in terms of the checkoff? Do you think checkoff should go away? Do you think it should be reformed and still utilized like it was originally intended? What do you think the best outcome for that is?
Well, in my opinion, I guess but I'm not someone who can, I'm not a lobbyist who can put this stuff together. I love the OFF Act because it is a solution that gets it out of NCBA's hands. The OFF Act is Opportunities for Fairness in Farming. And that what it essentially does is it takes the checkoff money away from any organization that lobbies and has like a registered lobbyist that works for it. And so that would put it back to kind of the cattle producers. I think the best solution would be voluntary because, I'm a free market guy, right?
Yep.
And that, I believe in competition and free market. And if the producers and the people running the checkoff don't see results, they should be able to put their money elsewhere. And so I just feel like making it voluntary, and it just instantly making it voluntary, you'd instantly find out how many cattle producers support it. Yeah. And it would, I think it would be I don't know if it would be that much of a surprise, because now if you see anything on the internet, NCBA has gotten over the past year really a lot of pushback against all of this stuff. People's eyes are being open. This worked back, early 2000. I keep saying like they live in a early 2000s kind of a world where they can just kind of say whatever they want and people go along with it, where you can't sit down at Google and instantly come up with the actual truth or what they said a few years ago, or and so the people are seeing what kind of slime balls these people are. And even everything I've done, I'd say I'm not like a journalist because I'm not sitting around on the phone all the time, but I'll sit and I have talked to a number of people who were on the beef board who've told me how it operates, and I've looked at how that whole operation works. I wrote an article about how the people in charge of the money on, they tell you that it's 100-person beef board from people all across the U.S. Those people have no, after talking to people on the beef board and doing my own research, those people have no influence really over where that money goes. It is a 20-person operating committee is what they call it. And 10 of those people are selected directly by the NCBA, which they don't call it the NCBA, but it's the Federation of State Beef Checkoffs. The Federation is part of the NCBA. This gets super complicated because that's how they want it. They don't want you to know that it's NCBA, but Federation, the CEO of the Federation is the same CEO of NCBA. It's just like a different department in the NCBA. But then the other 10 people are selected by the Checkoff Beef Board in the U.S. in the Checkoff Beef Board is always, they're all approved by USDA. It's just this giant kind of incestual deal where it's just NCBA members that run the whole thing, and then NCBA gets the vast majority of the money.
Yeah, it was like something like they get 26 million a year or something like that.
Yeah, I think it just kind of. I've broke this all down one time, but it was a couple years ago, and I should have looked that over before I came in. But yeah, the total checkoff is $80 million.
Yeah,
but half of that goes to states. Like and now states are upping their checkoff. So like Iowa went to $1.50. There's some checkoffs that are $2. They're only required to send 50 cents of each checkoff of what they receive for checkoff to the NCBA, or to what they call, or the Checkoff Beef Board, I guess.
Yeah, okay.
The Checkoff Beef Board gets 50%, but then they're able to donate to the federation however much they want, and then the federation, and that's kind of how they control. NCBA controls all your state affiliates. Like you're in Wyoming. I think Wyoming Stock Growers would be the NCBA affiliate. I'm in Iowa, or Iowa Cattlemen's is the NCBA affiliate. And they get those guys. It's almost kind of like a brainwashing scheme, because they control these organizations. And if you're familiar with, like, these guys have meetings, and their goal is, it's a bunch of cattle guys that want to get together and drink beer is what it really is. And so, they have these meetings, and they elect these people that the NCBA wants to be elected, because a lot of the guys just want to show up and drink beer. And so, and they aren't really that familiar. I mean, I was just told that, in Texas, the big one is Texas Southwestern Cattle Raisers Association. And they have done, like, they're the ones who tried to get Corbett Wall run off the air because he talked about EID tags. And there are members in that group. I've been told by somebody in Texas, he goes, I've talked to a number of guys who are in that group, and they swear those guys are against EID tags. And I'm like, what? There's just a lot of people that aren't that informed, because they just don't kind of want to show up and hang out. And, Grandpa was part of this organization, so I'm going to be part of the organization. And then they, but that's all changing. And I do see momentum in the other way.
It is changing. I went to Cattlemen's Association in Utah, and it was, I'm not kidding, the whole day was an NCBA sales pitch, a checkoff sales pitch.
Right.
Checkoff sales pitch, not NCBA. Checkoff sales pitch the whole day. We would sit down talking to somebody just to kind of get introduced to them, and the conversation would turn into a checkoff conversation.
Right. Yeah, and then if you go into, they require these beef quality assurances. If you haul cattle, or if you work at a certain feed yard, certain feed yards will require their employees to go through this beef quality assurance. And then they have these meetings, which are kind of the similar thing, but that's what it is. It's an indoctrination. And I posted a few weeks ago, because I looked up this Young Cattlemen's Conference, which is a big deal and always has been, the NCBA promotes. They get these younger people, and some of them are big time.
I've seen that. Yeah.
Influencer, like social media influencer types. But the stops that they took were, they went to NCBA headquarters. They went to Five Rivers, which I was just talking about, has 1 million head on feed. So corporate feeder. They went to Tyson Foods in Sioux City. And then they went to a certified Angus beef, which is a corporate, we've talked about them. And then they went on to DC. So it was just this week-long corporation, corporate, and then DC. And it was just a week-long indoctrination of NCBA, how wonderful NCBA is. And, they take these kids, and they're like, it's not, here's how you run your ranch. Yeah. It's, if you become successful, you could work at Five Rivers, or you could work for Tyson Foods as a cattle buyer, or, in the cattle division or whatever, or certified Angus beef, or any of that stuff.
Yeah.
And this is how you promote NCBA. And isn't this wonderful? And then they all get home, and they all post their thing. Like, I had the greatest time, and these people are so great, and we have such a great future in the beef industry or cattle industry. But it's really like, I mean, when I talk about brainwashing, they have a number of programs like that. Young Cattlemen deal, where they get these young people in, and really brainwash them to think that NCBA is really makes everything work.
Yeah. Does that extend into the FFA? Do you know?
I mean, FFA, I think, is involved with them, and I think in the cattle convention, CattleCon is what they call it.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not that. I should be more as far as the young people deal, but
I just thought of it as you were saying. I was like, oh, I wonder if FFA's captured, or because I think, like, in comparison to like what we've learned about pharma, right? The pharmaceutical companies are the ones training the doctors to prescribe pharmaceuticals. So by the time they get out, they're just prescribing pharmaceuticals. It's the same thing happening here in a sense.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And they're using checkoff dollars to do it. I mean,
yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah. So it's like you're paying for your kids' indoctrination.
Yeah. And when you look at that, only 3% of their members are ranchers.
Yeah. And I don't know that number. I know Thomas Massey he gave a number similar to that on the Senate floor. The House floor, I guess, when he was talking about, I think it was maybe checkoff reform. And so, and a lot of those numbers too are inflated because, and I don't know how they got that 3% number, but like if you're a member of an affiliate, meaning if you're a member of Iowa Cattlemen's, or like you said, Utah or Wyoming Stock Growers, then you'll be counted. Also, they have one thing. I mean, the corruption has no end. If you're listening, because if you feed your cattle. So a lot of people, cattle guys, like our family's cow calf, and we'll sell our calves, depending on the year when they hit a certain weight. So like say 500-600 pounds, then they go on to a feed yard, or wheat pasture or something like that. But if you retain ownership, which is what they call it, and you send your cattle to a feed yard and you pay the feed yard to feed your cattle, you have to pay. And part of that is you have to pay dues to the NCBA, and they call that fair share dues. And so if the feed yard is like a big, which all the corporate ones are, if they're big NCBA, and so then you are a member of NCBA and you start getting all the crap in the mail and all the stuff.
Yeah. So what do you think decisions are going to be made from?
Right.
It's coming from the people paying them all the money directly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And if you force all of the people feeding cattle at your feed yard to be NCBA members, then you get a better, more.
Yeah. And by the way, we're going to be able, by joining our team, we're going to be able to take $26 million of checkoff money and go lobby in your favor.
Right.
So
exactly.
Just join us, and we're going to take this money that we have free access to, and we're going to go lobby in your favor, having nothing to do with the family farms and ranches that are also contributing to that lobbying pool of money.
Yeah. By force.
Crazy. Yeah. The hardest part of this conversation for me is I think about the folks that are part of NCBA that are the cattlemen that don't know, right? Because they're great people. Like, they would just as easily be sitting at the table with us at RCAF. There's no difference other than NCBA and the rhetoric they've bought into there and the conversations happening in RCAF. There's no they're still cattlemen raising cows in the same way that everybody at RCAF. It's all the same. It's just they don't see, unless the ones that do see it, they're like, no, I make a lot of money on exports, so keep it going,
Yeah.
But really, if 3% of their membership is cattlemen, it is the cattlemen that are making the money on the exports.
Yeah. I mean, and it's like I said, if you grow up and you go to the Young Cattlemen's Conference, and one of the really interesting interactions I had. So last year I presented at the RCAP convention, and I gave a lot of these examples because it was on the checkoff. And that's on YouTube if you want to go back and watch it. But there was a girl, I posted something about the convention, Cattlemen's Convention. And I said, if you're going to this thing, you should remember that this is an indoctrination. Like, you are going to this cattle con to, their goal is to get you in there and tell you how wonderful NCBA is. And this girl commented like, oh, NCBA's, I used to think like you. She said, I used to think like you, but I went to DC and I stopped by their office and I sat in there for, I think she said, like over an hour. And I really learned a lot, and they really changed my mind and how I think. or like or on how I think they do a lot for the industry. And she was going on and on. I was like, you realize that's their job, right? Like that's the point. They wanted you in that office. They wanted to sit you down and get your mind right. But when you were outside of their office and doing your own research, you came up with the same stuff I did. The difference is you sat down with them and they've convinced you, right? It's like these people are lobbyists. This is their job, is to convince people to do certain things and think certain ways. And I mean, that's how it is. And there is good people that are, like I said, Grandpa was an NCA member, and we've been NCBA members for so long, and it goes into everything. Like I said, I've talked about their environmental stewardship award that they give, and they'll give out regional awards, and then they'll give out their national award, and you get invited to a big dinner. And this is sponsored by, which also NRCS. So the federal government is sponsoring this award that a lobbyist group is giving, and NRCS is an arm of USDA. So, and USDA oversees the checkoff. Like, I mean, it all comes back to like, and so what do you think they're going to do? They're giving NCBA money constantly. You think they're really going to try to clamp down on the checkoff and what they're doing with it? It's mind boggling when you really get into it.
It really is. It's you pull on, it's like a spider web. You pull on one string here and another string you had no idea that it was attached to it is moving. You're like, what?
Right. And I feel like it's so important. It was the second podcast I ever did. I just sat down in front of a camera. I'd never had a guest on. And so I just sat down and I went for, I think, 50 minutes on the checkoff.
Nice.
I researched it all and had all this stuff broke down. And then I've had another podcast where I talked Von Meyer. I talked to he served on the beef board and talked about how, I mean, this is a big thing for me. I talked to someone else who served on the beef board, and the one thing that has always stuck with me is there's people who've got on the beef board, and the beef board is supposed to control the money. They got on there in order to change things. Like they wanted to fix it. And every single one of them you talk to, they're like, there's no fixing it. As long as NCBA is in control, like we've done what we got in there and did what we can do. I've even talked to someone who served they got onto the operating committee, which I don't know how that ever happened, but they're like, even on there, like it was 1 against 19 others. But as a beef board member, you get 2 paid vacations, which are you go to CattleCon, you get the plane ticket, and you get a hotel room. And like this year's, it's in Nashville. It's been in New Orleans. It's been in Orlando. And then, so that's your one. And then their summer meetings last couple of years have been in San Diego. And so you get a paid plane ticket and hotel room to San Diego. And then you get to sit in the meetings for a few hours a day, and where they tell you how wonderful NCBA is doing with your checkoff money. And that's the beef board. I mean, that's how it works. Yeah. And so it's just, and what the one lady told me is she got on there. She hated NCBA and all this. But she's like, man, they throw one hell of a party. Like, and I could just see in her eyes, like she was like, we had a lot of fun, and it was like, oh, that's how she wanted to go back. Like,
crazy.
They get you.
Man, I've been to DC twice now on policy. I'd been there once before a long time ago. So really, I only know DC now because I've been there talking to people about different policy. And I don't think we can fix it as fast as it needs to be fixed through government. That's, our mission at From the Farm is to decentralize that and build this connection. And I'm feeling more and more grateful that we got started when we did, because when I go there and figure out like people that get into office that actually want to make a difference, and then they get there and they can't. You just can't, because the machine that's been built is just running a certain way. And we get mad at those people because they're not doing anything, but we really don't know what they're dealing with. And so I've started to see some of this, and I'm just like, okay, I do have hope for some change that can be done, but this is long-term change. And when we're losing farms and ranches at the speed we have to do both. We have to do what we can as a people by ourselves without our government, while hoping we've got people in office that are working on turning the ship, that are working on changing this monster of a machine that's been so ingrained into how this whole country operates that if you pull out the spark plug, the whole thing falls apart. So that's been something that I'm grateful to finally have that. Cause before I got out there, I was just pissed. Like, why are they not doing anything? I was just mad, like nowhere to put it. And then I got out there and I was like, oh, damn. I was worried that was actually my worst fears were confirmed. Like, oh, it's because you actually can't, no matter how much you want to. I don't think it's going to take a long time. Like, it's not changing in 4 years. It's not changing in 8 years. And so, a lot of the farmers and ranchers I talk to, I don't know that we have 8 years before our only choice is imports and lab grown and fake. And I don't say that to be an alarmist, but if you're in the industry, I'm in the industry, and it's like, it's dying.
Yeah. And there's almost like this celebration now. We have record prices week after week. But me and Shad got into it today, where he buys his cattle every year. And we have went from a time where guys couldn't stay in business because the prices were so low to a time where they're not going to stay in business because prices are so high. You have to spend millions of dollars in order to make a living. And where are you getting that money from? And, it got posted today. Somebody who, Eastern Nebraska cattle feeder, he just said, this is going to cause more industry concentration than low prices. Wow. The high prices are, because there isn't like a middle, and it makes people like me probably, it makes it easy for people to criticize me, because it's like, well, you're not happy with low prices, you're not happy with high prices. I mean, we're a cow calf, so we are, happy with higher prices, but we've also started, selling direct kind of locally and things like that. And that's going to make, for people like you, I mean, it's such a challenge. Yeah. And when people are just, and so, but to go back to the checkoff, as far as, how to change things, what would help, I mean, just right away, is to just start playing by the rules. There's a thing in the Beef Act and Order, it calls for referendum votes, meaning everyone who pays in the checkoff should get a vote. And it says, I don't know exactly what the wording is, but it doesn't say a specific, like yearly, or, it says during a certain amount of time, there should always be a referendum vote. I think it's been over, I can't remember how many years it's been, but I think I think it's like 30 or something, 20 or 30, but there just hasn't been a referendum vote for years and years
since they did.
Oh yeah. There hasn't been a referendum vote.
So they just stopped.
Yeah. I don't know if, I mean, maybe they had
to look and see if it stopped when the NCBA was formed.
Yeah, right. But yeah, so there's that. And then there's also, there's also supposed to be audited. I think if they do one audit, like one honest outside opinion, NCBA says we get audited every year, which means they pay for their own audit or some, I don't know how they do it. Yeah. But there was one audit that you had listed that they went through 7 days and they found $200,000 that were misappropriated.
2010 audit, $216,944 in misused funds by NCBA. USDA's own Office of Inspector General admitted it couldn't verify that funds were properly used.
Right. Yeah. I
think it also says the COO's salary is $428,000 plus.
Yeah. All right. And so, just a simple audit and post the results, and then let's have a referendum vote. That's all they have to do. And that's within the Beef Act and Order. But because, like I said, there is this relationship with NCBA and the USDA that has went on forever, that has just never happened. USDA is supposed to oversee NCBA. Like I said, they gave NCBA $445,000 to promote EID tags, and this was 2 years ago, I think.
Yeah.
And so it's just stuff like that. It's just back. And like I said, they sponsor their Environmental Steward Award. It's just pretty much like they just work together hand in hand all the time. And so they're never going to do anything about the checkoff unless we get a Doge type of, there's a lot of hope behind this new ag secretary, and she's, I'm hopeful. So,
yeah. All right, let's see if I got some questions over here. Oh, here's one. If you buy steak from Costco, where are they coming from? Or Publix, Kroger, etc. Just basic steak or ground beef. What about the ones that claim labels grass-fed and finished? So how would you answer that? If she's saying, how do I know where it's from?
You don't.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, that's
No.
why we want the mandatory country of origin label.
Yeah, if you look on the package, you'll see a white label that tells you what it is, how much it weighs, if it's an 80, if we're talking ground beef, 80, 20, 90, 10, whatever it is, and then there'll be a little circle stamp in the corner. That's the USDA bug. Now you can go and research that number that's on there, because the number on that little circle is specifically associated to the processing facility that meat came from. So when it goes to the USDA processing facility, they ground it into ground beef and they put in the package, they put that bug so you know which facility it came from. You can dig in the rabbit hole and try and go figure all that out. Also, sometimes in the grocery store, they'll have packages there with like a pretty label. You still want to go and Google that label, because it could be a fake label, not fake. It could be a white label by the same people importing beef from another country. And they just stood up a new LLC and now they're selling it under that label. And so if you go track down who's the parent company of that label, if it's not a family farm, it's probably going to be one of these big packers that just have another label. So it's like pork. When you go to the pork aisle and you're buying pork and you think you have a choice, you're not. It's all Smithfield.
Right. Yeah.
And they just have different labels. So the best way you can answer that, though, is going right to the producer. Then you'll know.
Yeah. That's how when you buy it at those places, there isn't a way. But yeah, if you want that answer, you go to AJ.
Yeah,
right?
That's right. Go to From the Farm. We got 100 farmers on there across the nation.
Yeah. Right.
Let's see if we got any other questions here that came in. Any last thoughts before we jump off here, Jim? Oh, here's one. What can we do to protect ourselves from the New World screwworm? We didn't even get into that.
Yeah. I mean, keep the border closed, I guess, is the main.
Yeah, keep the border closed until they eradicate it.
Right. And that's, they had their announcement last week. They're doing everything they can. I mean, almost $1 billion worth of fixing Mexico's problem, but that's just where we're at.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, and that goes into NCBA. They opened the border for a little while, and NCBA was all cheerleading that while RCAF was pushing back against it. And who knows where we'd be if that opened, and who knows where we'll be. I mean, I don't know if it's just, we're really hopeful that it doesn't get in here if you've heard anything about what it was like before. So,
yeah, to your point.
So over the next few weeks, we will see additional ports being opened in order to allow those cattle to come across. Again, we know that we can do both trade and biosecurity at the exact same time. New World screwworm is a threat. It is further south in Mexico, and the border closure really was a political one. It wasn't based upon animal health issues. It was a political action by the secretary to get the attention of the Mexican government. And on the trips that USDA has taken down there, they report back that the Mexican government is doing much more now than they have for several months in taking care of.
That's not enough of that, because that's all a bunch of BS. Because
Colin Woodall, that is Colin Woodall, who I said the same CEO for the Federation. And the interesting thing about him, he's NCBA CEO, and he comes from Cargill, so he comes from the second largest beef packer in the U.S. So I mean, it's all
at all.
Yeah, like when I said incestual, it's like everybody's connected when you get in this corporate USDA, NCBA kind of world.
Well, and so here he is. Just timeline for those that haven't been following. They closed the border. And then the NCBA started screaming for them to open the border. And RCAF was saying, no, do not open the border until they've got a handle on it.
Mm-hmm.
So here's this organization claiming to represent the cattle producers of America, putting pressure to open the border. So this statement was made, and then they opened the border back up,
right?
Because they've got a lot of lobbying power. So they opened the border back up, and then they launched some efforts to keep it pushed back. It was like 360 miles south of the border at or something like that. They deployed some measures. They thought they got it handled within like a week, which is ridiculous. So like, oh, we're good now. We can open it. And then they open the border. And then a week later, it's like, oh, actually, we just found more cases 160 miles south of the border. And they're like, oh shit, we better close it again. So they did.
Right. And
so
that's the thing.
Closed.
Yes. And part of the announcement last week was they're going to send more USDA officials into Mexico, which is what really need. I mean, opening that border was almost just like, oh yeah, we trust you, Mexico, what you're telling us. I don't care what they say as far as how many miles it was. They want that border open. And, their government is controlled by the cartel or who knows who, and who knows who owns those cattle that they're desperate to get across here. But there's also U.S. producers who now are seeing these record prices. They're sitting there with empty feedlots because they've always depended on Mexican cattle. And now, they're part of Texas Cattle Feeder Association, which is a big lobbying group. They're a big time affiliate with NCBA, and they need these cattle. But to really protect the U.S. herd, we have to just keep that border closed.
Yeah. Yep. I'm glad they're keeping it closed now, but as the pressure mounts, the public pressure and awareness of this is important. So, because I know the pressure's mounting on those that are the ones keeping the border closed from the lobbyists. So we just need to keep the counter pressure so that they don't bend the knee.
Yes.
But, awesome. Well, Jim, appreciate your time. Grateful to have you back on. Thanks for the work you guys are doing at Lonesome Lands.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So appreciate everybody being on the show tonight. Follow up with us if you have any other questions. We love having you guys here. Appreciate all the comments, all the support from the farm is doing really well. We've got a lot of new producers coming on board, a lot of consumers starting to come through from the farm, and then all of the other work we're doing outside of that to help support our food system and make sure that y'all can shake the hand that feeds you. Thanks, everybody. I hope you have a great night.
In 1930, there were 6 million farms in America. Today, that number has plummeted to 1.8 million. And now 85% of the beef in America is controlled by just 4 companies. That means fewer farmers have to produce more food, thus incentivizing them to produce a high quantity of food instead of high quality food. Plus, if something goes wrong, the 98% of us that don't grow food are at risk of starving. Yikes, that's dark. Let's go darker. A few very wealthy companies have control over all the food. And if North Korea has taught us anything, a centralized food supply can accidentally or intentionally kill a lot of people. The bottom line is this: you can't wait until hits the fan to figure out what your family's going to eat, but all hope is not lost. Here's the plan. It's called From the Farm, an industry-disrupting platform that directly connects customers and local farmers with a website that's as easy to use as Airbnb. From the Farm gives you fresher, higher quality foods, strengthens communities, and helps small farmers not only survive, but thrive. We can't do this alone. We need the strength of the American people behind us. Help us build a new food system that combines the wisdom of the past with the technology of the future. Investing in From the Farm isn't just a financial decision. It's an investment into our future, our small family farms, and our food sovereignty. Invest today.